Hey, what's going on guys? John here. Now, best video editing computers. This is a very popular question. And what is really the best video editing computer? Well, to answer this question, we gotta go back in time. To the time of the dinosaurs. Okay, not that far back. But to 2002, when I received my first video editing computer. And lucky for you guys, I never throw anything out, so here it is, 2002 Windows XP. Back when I first started video editing, I started on Windows Movie Maker. And most people have those humble beginnings either in Apple, iMovie, or different nonlinear editors, that were just coming out with the new PCs back in the day. And back then we didn't really focus that much on the computer specifications. If the computer turned on and was able to connect to the internet and we were able to copy and paste files, that was pretty much it. And video back then wasn't that big. It was like 360, 480. It wasn't crazy like the 4K footage we were dealing with today. So why don't we take a look at what's inside and see how technology has advanced from 2002 to today. Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome to my kitchen. I got this baby running and it didn't blow up, so that's great. All right, so I'm in the system preferences in XP when I finally found it, which, I'm not used to this, so I don't think I ever looked for it before on the old XP, but I got it going here. And I'll put a screenshot on my screen. So the computer is 100 gigabytes of storage, hard disk. I don't think SSD was around back then. It's a 2002, and the computer is an Intel Celeron R CPU, 2.4 gigahertz. And I looked this up, I believe that it has 2 cores. So with 2 megabytes of cache. So you can see it's pretty quick, actually, considering it's a 2002, it's 2.4 gigahertz, but it only has 2 cores. So when it comes to multitasking, this computer is obviously not up to par. And it has 1 gigabytes of RAM, which is also another drawback. So obviously this thing needs a lot more RAM inside it. I'm not even sure if I can upgrade this thing, but it was fun to hop in here and see what the specs were. So I'm glad I did. Ah, the good old days. So why did I show you my 2002 Windows XP? Well, I wanted to show you how technology advances over time, and that's exponentially. So back in the day, that was a 2.4 gigahertz 2-core processor. And today's computers, I looked up the fastest computer I could find by Apple, and this certified refurbished, which is in the link below down in the description, is 2.4 gigahertz, so around the same speed, but with 28 cores, so it can just dominate. And the RAM compared to the 2002 computer, that was 1 gigabyte, and this computer has 1.5 terabytes. That's right, terabytes, not space, like disk space, but actually speed, the RAM, random access memory. 1.5 terabytes, and that's just mind-blowing. Just 5 years ago, I thought 16 gigabytes of RAM was fast, and today that's just crazy, seeing 1.5 terabytes. So how can we use this information to our advantage when buying a computer? Well, I think since you see how exponentially, technology is growing, you have to be cautious about not future-proofing too much. But the way technology is advancing so quickly, you don't want to plan too far in the future and spend too much money on things that are just going to get cheaper within a few years. So case in point, this $45,000 computer, it might be a lot cheaper a few years from now. And the other thing with technology that you have to keep in mind is that it kind of works in building blocks. When it comes to video editing, you have the video editing computer, you have the footage, and you have the display, the TV, or the thing that people are viewing. Each of these pieces have to advance in order for the technology to be useful. A great example of this is 8K footage, because cameras are just coming out that can shoot in 8K, but really TVs haven't caught up yet. And now as video editors are kind of stuck in the middle thinking, well, do we need a computer that can edit 8K footage? So, as these different layers kind of advance, think of them as building blocks. So, once there's TVs and it's readily available, then, the technology all advances together. If one piece lags behind, then there's no point investing in that technology to advance something that isn't advancing in other parts. So, if 8K TVs never come out, then there's no point shooting them 8K because no one can see it in 8K. Obviously, this isn't going to happen. There will be 8K TVs, and one day there will be 12K and 16K TVs and everything. So, everything advances together. You just have to keep an eye on which part is progressing quicker than the others and make your video editing computer decisions based on that. All right, so let's talk budget. Looking at video editing computers, what to do, what to buy. All right, so, the cheapest way is to build your own, and this can be very intimidating if you haven't built your own computer. I personally have not built my own computer yet. It is on my bucket list, however, so one day I'll probably make a video showing a computer build. In my experience, probably an epic fail. But nonetheless, say if you just want to buy a computer, I would recommend just buying an Apple. They are a little bit more expensive, but you're getting a really good product if you don't want to worry about the technical aspects of the computer. You got Apple Care, and if something happens, you can easily return it to the Apple store. They'll fix it and they can give it back to you, and usually it's covered under a warranty. But for those tech-savvy people out there, building your own computer is the way to go because you can save up to 50% on just buying the parts and putting them together yourself. So let's take a look. I have a blog down in the description below to a link that goes over a lot of different builds per budget, starting at the $750 range, ranging up to $6,500. So feel free to take a look at those builds and pick out which one works for you. Now, when shopping for a video editing computer, you have to keep in mind the specifications and what you're really looking for. So I'm gonna go through each part of the computer and things to keep in mind for each thing. So let's start with the CPU. The CPU is the center processing unit of the computer, and it's probably one of the most important parts of the computer in general because it controls everything about it. All of the operations come from the CPU. So what CPU do you need as a video editor that's strong enough to operate all those video editing commands, the renders, all the effects and different things that it has to process? Now, when you're looking at CPU, you'll often look at the speed, like the gigahertz, the gigawatts, the 2.4, 4.5, whatever. That's how fast it can compute. But what really matters when it comes to video editing is the amount of cores that a CPU has. So this is basically how many workers per se that can go 4.5 gigahertz. If you only have, for example, the old 2002 XP only had 2 cores, but like, for example, that really expensive one had 28 cores. So obviously more cores is the better. But keep in mind with technological advancements, only so many cores can really show a difference. It's marginal, I would say, after 10 to 12 cores because, 4K footage, I would say there's not really much of a difference. But say, one day if you're editing 8K, 12K footage, then more cores is definitely gonna help you. But we're not really at that point yet. So I would shop around getting a CPU of between maybe 8 to 10 cores. Past 12, I don't really notice a difference. All right, let's talk about RAM. So, back in the day, I was like, oh wow, 16 gigabytes, that's fast. And I would say 16 gigabytes is the minimum these days, especially if you're editing 4K footage. I would really lean to like 32, 64, and then even 128 is really good. Now, storage space, if you're building your own computer, is really great for a video editor because you can segment different hard drives that can be segmented for different things. So for example, one drive can be like your storage, your files. Another drive could be possibly your cache, and another drive could possibly be like the software. So you can have and set up different drives. That way each part is segmented in different areas. The reason why this is important is because you want your video editing software to be able to read the files and the cache files very fast. And if everything has its own drive, it's basically having like 4 hands instead of 2, is an analogy there. But basically your video editing software will be able to compute faster and read the files faster. And obviously SSDs are faster in general, so you'll want to look at getting SSDs for your cache especially. If you're looking for a drive possibly for archiving only, HDDs are great because you can get a lot of space at a cheap price. Let's talk about graphics cards. So honestly, graphics cards, it really depends. If you're in DaVinci Resolve, I would say, graphic cards are essential. You need to get a really, really good graphics card because DaVinci Resolve relies heavily on the GPU. But if you're in Premiere Pro, not so much. You don't need an amazing graphics card. All right, so what would I get? I have a link down in the description below to the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2070 Super. This is a really solid GPU that will give you a lot of performance. And for my personal opinion for CPU, I have a link also down in the video description for the AMD Ryzen 9 3900X 12-core 24-thread, 4.6 gigahertz AM4 processor. This is probably the best, and I wouldn't go past this, I would say. 12 cores, I think you're good for a few years until technology really starts advancing. But, it's just something to keep an eye on because, we are at that point, on the curve as we kind of go up into a straight line exponentially as computers and chips and everything really start to take off here in the near future. So I hope you found this video very helpful if you are looking to get a video editing computer, if you're new and wanted to learn more about video editing computers and what to look for in specs. Feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.